Welcome to the World Coin, where every old coin has a story, and some tiny coins can hide unbelievable fortunes worth millions of dollars. From rare minting errors and missing mint marks to historic coins that collectors dream of owning, today we're going deep into the world of extraordinary coins and their incredible values. So before you spend that old coin, take a closer look. You might be holding a piece of history worth $1 million, $5 million, or even more. Stay with us, because here at the World Coin, one small coin could change everything. I have two videos of Washington quarter dollar. So let's get started. The 1978 Washington quarter dollar with no mint mark is an interesting piece of United States coin history, especially for collectors who enjoy searching ordinary circulation coins for unusual characteristics, rare errors, exceptional condition, and hidden varieties. The no mint mark 1978 Washington quarter is associated with Philadelphia production, although production records for this period are more complicated because West Point also struck some quarters without mint marks. PCGS explains that the reported 1978 Philadelphia mintage of 521,452,000 incorporates West Point production, making the no mint mark issue much more interesting from a historical manufacturing perspective. The 1978 Washington quarter belongs to the classic Washington quarter series that began in 1932. The obverse features a left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States, while the reverse shows the traditional American eagle holding an olive branch and arrows. This heraldic eagle reverse returned to regular circulation quarters in 1977 after the special bicentennial design of 1975-1976. The absence of a mint mark on a 1978 quarter is not automatically an error. Philadelphia quarters of this period normally carried no mint mark, and the United States Mint did not begin placing the P mint mark on circulating quarters until 1980. Therefore, a 1978 quarter without a mint mark should not be called a missing mint mark error simply because there is no letter beside Washington's portrait. The coin is made from copper nickel-clad material rather than silver. A standard 1978 Washington quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams and measures about 24.3 millimeters in diameter. Its edge is reeded, and the copper core can normally be seen between the outer nickel-copper layers along the edge. These specifications are useful when examining a suspected error because a genuine wrong planchet or composition error can have a significantly different weight, diameter, or appearance. In very fine condition, a 1978 Washington quarter shows clear circulation wear. George Washington's portrait remains easily recognizable, the date is readable, and much of the reverse eagle design remains visible. However, the highest portions of Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers will show wear. A very fine example can be attractive and historically interesting, but very fine condition by itself does not make a 1978 quarter worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The most important feature in the example described here is the unusual dag, or mark. This mark should be examined very carefully because its origin can determine whether it has any additional collector value. A genuine mint-created feature can potentially make a common coin more interesting, while a scratch, gouge, stain, or other post-mint damage generally does not create the same premium. The first question collectors should ask is whether the mark is raised or recessed. If the feature rises above the surrounding surface, it may deserve investigation as a possible die crack, die break, or other striking characteristic. If the feature is cut into the surface, it is more likely to be damage that occurred after the coin left the mint. A die crack can occur when a working die develops a crack after repeated use. The crack can transfer onto coins as a raised line because the damaged area of the die changes the shape of the metal during striking. If the dag on a 1978 quarter is a genuine raised die characteristic, its location, shape, and relationship to the design should be compared with other known examples. A die break can be even more dramatic. When a section of the die breaks away, the resulting coin can show a larger raised area, sometimes called a cud. Such features can be highly collectible when they are clearly mint-made and authenticated. However, not every strange mark is a die error. A 1978 quarter could have spent decades in circulation, encountering other coins, machines, pockets, drawers, bags, and containers. Scratches and contact marks are therefore common. A post-mint scratch may look dramatic but does not necessarily increase the coin's value. The location of the dag is also extremely important. Collectors should record whether the mark appears on Washington's portrait, near the date, around the lettering, beside the hair ribbon, on the rim, or on the reverse eagle. The exact position can help specialists determine whether the feature corresponds to a known minting characteristic. The date 1978 should be examined under magnification. Look carefully at the digits for unusual doubling, distorted shapes, spacing differences, or other abnormalities. The lettering Liberty and In God We Trust can also be inspected for possible doubled features. But collectors should be careful because machine doubling can sometimes resemble a valuable double die. The reverse deserves equal attention. Examine United States of America, quarter dollar, e pluribus unum, the eagle, arrows, olive branch, shield, and surrounding details. A genuine die characteristic may appear as a raised feature that flows naturally with the original design. The rim should also be checked. An abnormal rim can sometimes provide evidence of a striking error. A broad strike, for example, can occur when the collar fails to contain the planchette correctly during striking. The result can be a coin with an unusually expanded shape and a different edge appearance. Off-center strikes are another type of error collectors search for. If a planchette is improperly positioned between the dies, the design may be shifted toward one side, leaving part of the planchette blank. Dramatic off-center errors can command premiums depending on the percentage of displacement, condition, and overall appearance. Wrong planchette errors are even more interesting. A quarter die can occasionally strike a blank intended for another denomination. This can create a coin that is substantially lighter or smaller than a normal quarter. The 1978 series has documented wrong planchette examples, including quarters struck on dime and nickel planchettes. One documented 1978 quarter struck on a dime planchette reportedly sold for $14,100 at auction, demonstrating how a major authenticated error can transform an otherwise ordinary date into a valuable collectible. A wrong planchette error should never be identified simply because a coin looks unusual. The weight and diameter must be carefully measured, and the coin should be professionally authenticated. A damaged coin can sometimes appear smaller or thinner because of wear or alteration, so physical evidence is essential. Missing clad layer errors are another possibility for 1978 quarters. The standard quarter consists of outer layers bonded to a copper core. If one of the clad layers is missing, the coin can have a distinctly different color and surface appearance. Genuine missing clad layer errors can attract significant collector interest. Again, the unusual dag described on this coin should not automatically be called a missing clad layer error. The feature must actually show characteristics consistent with a manufacturing problem. The 1978 Washington quarter is also interesting because the reported no mint mark production includes an unusual historical connection to West Point. PCGS explains that West Point supplemented quarter production during the late 1970s and that the 1978 no mint mark production figure incorporates West Point output. PCGS cites an estimated 20.8 million West Point quarters within the broader no mint mark total. This means that the simple phrase, no mint mark, does not tell the entire production story of the 1978 quarter. It identifies the coin as part of the no mint mark group, but it does not necessarily prove that every individual example was physically struck at Philadelphia. This historical detail makes the 1978 quarter particularly interesting for advanced collectors. The coin looks ordinary, but its production history involves more than one facility and illustrates how the United States Mint responded to heavy demand for circulating coinage. The 1978 issue had a combined no mint mark production figure of more than 521 million coins, while Denver produced approximately 287,373,152 quarters with the D mint mark. San Francisco produced proof examples. Because the number of ordinary 1978 quarters is so large, the normal circulated example is generally worth close to face value. Published price guides commonly place circulated no mint mark examples around 25 cents, while values increase substantially for exceptional uncirculated grades. One current guide lists MS67 plus examples in the hundreds or even thousands depending on the individual coin and market. CoinValueLookup.com. Another current guide reports a $2,875 sale for a very high-grade 1978 no mint mark quarter, showing how dramatically condition can affect the value of this otherwise common date. This is an important lesson for collectors. The difference between a worn 1978 quarter and an extraordinary certified mint state example can be enormous. The date alone does not create the value. The grade, preservation, rarity, and special characteristics create the premium. For the very fine coin described here, the normal market value would generally be much lower than hundreds or thousands of dollars. If the coin has a valuable feature, that feature must be independently established. The $2 million figure should therefore be treated as a hypothetical extraordinary value scenario rather than the normal market value of a 1978 very fine Washington quarter. A standard 1978 quarter is not a $2 million coin. For a coin to approach an extraordinary valuation, it would need to possess something truly exceptional, such as an extremely rare and authenticated mint error, a unique discovery, extraordinary provenance, or another characteristic capable of generating intense collector competition. Even then, the actual value would have to be established by the market. The American government originally issued the coin with a face value of 25 cents. The government does not guarantee a $2 million collectible value. Modern collectible prices are established by the numismatic marketplace through dealers, collectors, certification services, and auction results. This distinction is especially important when discussing valuable coins online. A dramatic headline can attract attention, but the actual value must be supported by evidence. The DAG on this particular coin is therefore the feature that deserves the closest examination. If it is a genuine raised die characteristic, it may provide a clue about the coin's production. If it is simply a scratch or gouge, it is unlikely to create a spectacular premium. Collectors should use magnification and different lighting angles. A raised feature can sometimes be easier to see when light moves across the surface. A photograph from several angles can also help document the feature for a professional. Do not attempt to test the mark by scratching it or scraping it. Do not polish the coin. Do not use chemicals. Do not try to flatten the mark. Any alteration could permanently damage the coin and make authentication more difficult. The original surface should be preserved. The copper-nickel clad composition can also help identify the coin. A normal 1978 quarter should have the expected weight, diameter, and edge appearance. If the coin is dramatically lighter or smaller, a wrong planchette possibility may deserve investigation. A digital scale accurate to at least 1/100th of a gram can be useful for preliminary examination. A precise caliper can be used to check the diameter. However, these measurements are only preliminary evidence and should not replace professional authentication. The edge should also be inspected for unusual characteristics. A normal 1978 Washington quarter has a reeded edge. If the edge is completely smooth, unusually thin, unusually broad, or otherwise inconsistent with a standard quarter, further examination may be worthwhile. The obverse mint mark area should also be examined. For a 1978 no mint mark quarter, the absence of AP is normal. The United States Mint did not begin using the P mint mark on circulating quarters until 1980. This means collectors should not confuse the no mint mark appearance with an error. The real opportunity is in the coin's unusual physical characteristics. The historical design is another reason this quarter remains popular. George Washington's portrait has appeared on the quarter since 1932, and the eagle reverse used in 1978 became a familiar part of American circulation coinage. The design would remain in use through the 1990s before the introduction of the 50-state quarters program. The 1978 quarter therefore belongs to the final decades of the classic Washington quarter design before one of the largest design changes in modern United States coinage. The eagle on the reverse carries an olive branch and arrows, representing the nation's desire for peace while maintaining the ability to defend itself. The shield and surrounding inscriptions complete a design that combines national symbolism with traditional American imagery. Even a circulated example preserves this history. The coin also represents an era when the United States was dealing with high demand for circulating coinage. Production was spread among multiple facilities, including the use of West Point for supplemental quarter production. The no mint mark 1978 quarter is therefore an interesting reminder that mint marks do not always tell the complete production story. For collectors, the most valuable lesson is to separate the standard coin from exceptional examples. A normal very fine 1978 no mint mark quarter is common. A high-grade certified example can be considerably more valuable. A dramatic authenticated mint error can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The documented wrong planchette examples demonstrate this difference particularly well. A normal quarter may be worth 25 cents, while a rare quarter struck on a completely different planchette can reach thousands because the error is obvious, scarce, and verifiable. 1978 quartervalue.com. The same principle applies to off-center strikes, missing clad layers, doubled dies, and major die breaks. But rarity alone is not enough. Collector demand matters. A visually dramatic error is often more desirable because collectors can immediately understand what makes it different. Certification can significantly increase confidence. Professional grading services can authenticate the coin, determine its grade, and sometimes identify the error or variety. A certified coin also becomes easier to compare with documented auction results. If the unusual dag on this coin is believed to be responsible for a very high value, professional certification should be considered before making any major selling decision. A collector should document the coin's condition before sending it for examination. Photograph the entire obverse, entire reverse, the edge, and close-ups of the unusual feature. Record the weight and diameter. Keep all documentation together. The market value should then be estimated from comparable authenticated coins, not from unrelated examples. This is especially important because online listings can contain unrealistic asking prices. A seller may list an ordinary quarter for thousands or millions of dollars, but the listing itself does not prove that anyone is willing to pay that amount. Actual completed sales provide stronger evidence. Next up, the 1965 Washington quarter dollar is one of the most historically important quarters in modern United States coinage because it marks the dramatic transition from traditional 90% silver quarters to the new copper-nickel clad composition. A 1965 quarter with no mint mark is not automatically an error. In fact, the absence of a mint mark was intentional during this period, and regular 1965 quarters were produced without mint marks. The coin is therefore interesting because of its historic year, its unusual place in the Washington quarter series, and the possibility of genuine mint errors or varieties that can make individual examples far more valuable than ordinary circulated pieces. The 1965 Washington quarter carries the famous portrait of George Washington on the obverse. Washington faces left, with liberty above his portrait, the national motto "In God We Trust" beside him, and the date 1965 below. The reverse presents the traditional American eagle with outstretched wings, surrounded by United States of America, quarter dollar, and E pluribus unum. The design was created by John Flanagan and became one of the longest-running designs in American coinage. The year 1965 is especially important because the United States was changing the composition of its circulating coinage. Washington quarters had been struck in 90% silver through 1964, but beginning in 1965, regular circulating quarters were produced using copper-nickel clad metal. The standard 1965 quarter consists of outer layers containing copper and nickel bonded to a copper core. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams and measures about 24.3 millimeters in diameter with a reeded edge. This transition gives the 1965 quarter tremendous historical importance. It was the first regular circulating Washington quarter year of the clad era, making it a key date for collectors who study the development of American coinage. The change was driven by the economic pressures surrounding silver and the need to maintain a dependable supply of circulating coins. The 1965 quarter therefore represents the end of one era and the beginning of another. For collectors examining a 1965 Washington quarter in very fine condition, the first thing to understand is that normal wear does not make the coin extremely rare. A very fine coin will show moderate circulation wear, with the main portrait details still visible but with noticeable softness on the highest points. Washington's hair, cheek, jawline, and other raised areas may show wear, while the lettering and date should remain clearly readable. The reverse should also retain considerable detail in very fine condition. The eagle, shield, arrows, olive branch, and lettering remain visible, although the highest feathers and other raised areas will show circulation wear. A very fine 1965 quarter can be an attractive historical coin, but its condition alone normally does not justify a value in the hundreds or thousands of dollars. The most important potential source of extraordinary value is the unusual mark or dag mentioned on the coin. A strange mark can mean very different things depending on how it was created. If the feature was created during the minting process, it could potentially represent a die crack, die break, struck through error, planchette problem, or another legitimate mint error. If the mark was created after the coin left the mint, it would normally be considered damage. This distinction is extremely important for anyone searching for valuable coins. A scratch made by another coin, a gouge caused by machinery, corrosion, staining, or accidental damage can look dramatic but generally does not make an ordinary quarter extremely valuable. A genuine mint error, on the other hand, can sometimes transform a common coin into a highly desirable collectible. The first test is to examine whether the dag is raised or recessed. A raised line may indicate a die-related feature because a crack or break in the die can transfer raised metal onto the struck coin. A recessed line is more likely to represent damage that removed or displaced metal after striking. This is only a preliminary observation, but it is an important starting point. A genuine die crack can occur when a working die develops a fracture during production. Because the damaged area of the die is raised or altered, the resulting coins can show a corresponding raised line. If the unusual dag on the 1965 quarter is raised and follows a pattern consistent with a damaged die, specialists may investigate it as a possible die variety or die error. A die break can be even more dramatic. When part of a die breaks away, the resulting coins can show a large raised area or cud-like feature. Major die breaks can attract strong collector interest because they provide visible evidence of a die failure during the minting process. The location of the mark is also important. Collectors should carefully record whether it appears near Washington's portrait, the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, the rim, or somewhere on the reverse. The exact position can help specialists compare the feature with known examples. The 1965 quarter is particularly interesting because the year produced several types of collectible errors. One of the most famous possibilities is a 1965 quarter struck on a leftover 90% silver planchette. Such a coin would be extremely different from the normal clad issue. A normal clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, while a 90% silver quarter planchette weighs approximately 6.25 grams. This is why weighing a 1965 quarter is one of the most useful first steps for collectors. A coin that weighs close to 5.67 grams is consistent with the normal clad composition. A coin weighing close to 6.25 grams deserves additional investigation because it may be struck on a leftover silver planchette. Weight alone does not prove an error, but it can identify an important possibility. The rare silver transitional error is one of the major reasons the 1965 quarter receives so much attention from collectors. Documented examples have sold for thousands of dollars, including a reported $16,800 sale for a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchette. Another documented 1965 silver planchette quarter sold for $7,050 at auction, demonstrating how a genuine transitional error can create a major premium over the normal 25-cent face value. These examples show why the 1965 date is so important. The coin was produced during the exact transition from silver to clad coinage, creating an opportunity for rare wrong metal strikes that are much more valuable than ordinary examples. However, a normal 1965 quarter is not silver. It is a copper-nickel clad coin. Collectors should not assume that every 1965 quarter with a silver-colored appearance is a silver error. Many normal clad quarters have bright surfaces or worn edges that can create confusion. The edge is especially useful. A normal clad quarter generally shows a visible copper-colored line between the outer layers. A genuine silver planchette does not show the same copper core appearance. This makes edge inspection another useful preliminary test. The 1965 quarter also has no mint mark by design. This is an important point because many people believe that a missing P, D, or S automatically makes the coin rare. That is not correct for 1965. The mint intentionally suspended mint marks during this period, so the absence of a mint mark is normal rather than an error. The no mint mark characteristic therefore should not be the reason for $1 million valuation. The real source of potential value would have to be something else, such as an authenticated mint error, unusual variety, extraordinary grade, or another exceptional characteristic. The 1965 Washington quarter had a very large production. Graysheet identifies the 1965 issue as part of the clad Washington Quarter series and notes that the normal catalog values can range from face value to substantially higher prices for exceptional pieces and errors. Because so many ordinary examples exist, a normal circulated very fine 1965 quarter remains a common collectible. Its historical importance is high, but historical importance and market rarity are not the same thing. This distinction is essential when discussing a claimed $2 million value. A standard 1965 Washington quarter in very fine condition has no established market value of $2 million. There is no verified public sale that establishes a normal 1965 no-mint mark quarter at that level. A $2 million figure should therefore be treated as a hypothetical extraordinary claim rather than the ordinary value of the coin. For such a valuation to be credible, the coin would need to be extraordinarily rare, professionally authenticated, supported by strong provenance, and accepted by serious collectors in the auction market. The documented market provides a more realistic picture. Ordinary circulated 1965 quarters are generally worth close to face value, while high-grade examples and major errors can reach hundreds, thousands, and in exceptional documented cases much more. Some published guides list high-grade 1965 quarters at substantial premiums, especially at the highest certified grades. This happens because even a common coin can become scarce in superb condition. Contact marks, scratches, bag marks, and circulation wear affected huge numbers of these coins, so pristine examples can be much harder to locate. This is where condition becomes extremely important. A very fine coin has already experienced circulation, while an MS-67 or MS-68 coin may preserve nearly all of its original surfaces and mint appearance. The difference between these grades can produce a huge difference in market value. For the coin described here, however, the main interest is the unusual dag. If that feature is genuine and mint-made, it could potentially add significant collector interest. If it is ordinary damage, it would not normally create a major premium. Collectors should use a magnifying glass or a 10x loupe to examine the mark. Look at its edges, depth, direction, and relationship to nearby design elements. Examine it under different lighting angles rather than relying on one photograph. Do not clean the coin. Do not polish it. Do not scrape the mark. Do not apply chemicals. Cleaning can permanently change the original surface and can make an important error more difficult to authenticate. The best approach is preservation. Keep the coin in a safe, non-damaging holder and document its appearance with clear photographs. The weight should then be checked with an accurate digital scale. For a normal clad 1965 quarter, approximately 5.67 grams is expected. A reading around 6.25 grams would make the coin worthy of further investigation as a possible silver planchet error. The diameter should also be checked. A standard quarter measures approximately 24.3 millimeters. A significantly different diameter could indicate a wrong planchet strike, although damage and measurement errors must also be considered. The edge should be examined carefully for the copper core. A normal clad quarter has the characteristic layered appearance. A suspected silver planchet error should show a fundamentally different edge appearance. Another important error category is the wrong planchet strike. During production, a blank intended for another denomination can occasionally enter a press and be struck by quarter dies. Because a quarter design is larger than a dime or cent planchet, parts of the design may be missing or extend beyond the smaller blank. Documented 1965 wrong planchet examples can be worth substantial amounts. Some published guides report four-figure prices for quarters struck on dime or other incorrect planchets. Off-center strikes are another possibility. If the planchet was not correctly positioned when struck, the design may be shifted toward one side. Minor displacement may carry only a modest premium, while dramatic off-center errors can become much more desirable. A struck-through error is another type collectors may investigate. If grease, debris, wire, cloth, or another foreign material interferes with the die and planchet during striking, it can leave an unusual depression or missing detail. Genuine struck-through errors can range from minor to dramatic. Double dies are also an important category. A true double die variety is created during die preparation and can show distinct doubling on letters, numbers, or design elements. It should not be confused with machine doubling, which can produce flat, shelf-like secondary edges and is generally much less valuable. The unusual dag mentioned here could potentially be related to one of these categories, but it cannot be classified accurately without examining the actual coin.